This is the 217 Recovery Podcast with Corey Winfield.
Hello, this call is for Corey Winfield. This is Attorney Paul Jancha Jr. calling. I'm appointed to represent you on a case coming up in the Niles Trial Court set for December 18th at 1 o'clock. So please give me a call back. Thank you. Bye.
And that day I went to jail. Today, December 15th, 2020, 217 Recovery Podcast. My name is Corey Winfield. Joining me in the studio, my partner in life,
Marnie Winfield.
Yay. Yeah, so today is my 2-year anniversary of being clean.
Mm-hmm.
Clean and sober, off all drugs.
Congratulations, baby.
Alcohol was my drug of choice. And thank you. I really appreciate it. You got me a beautiful 2-year coin.
Mm-hmm.
I took a picture of it and I put it on Facebook and Twitter, I think, and Instagram. I think I grammed it. And I put on Facebook, I think, that, you know, it was my 2 years, and I went from being handcuffed to a hospital bed to fast forward 2 years, waking up to a beautiful wife. So, I mean, the things that are possible in recovery will just blow your mind. You just have to fight through it and give it a chance. It's hard. It's a struggle. For me, it was. In and out of rehabs. And, you know, I did it on my own. It wasn't until the end where I was actually forced to go, as I would find out. And now on the 18th, as the lawyer there said it was my court date, they sent me back to jail. I got pulled over. Well, not really. I didn't get pulled over, but it was on the 28th of November is when I went to jail the first time. I was there for a week and I got out and I drank again. And that's when I was taken to the hospital on the 14th. So the 15th was the first day I didn't drink anything. And they handcuffed me to the bed. And I was kind of shocked by that. I was like, "What are you doing?" She's like, "Well, you're out on bond. You're not supposed to drinking, you know, so you go back to jail." And the doctor came in and was like, "I don't know how long you're going to wait here, but it's going to take quite a while for his blood alcohol to come down." And the cop was like, "Okay, well, what, an hour or two?" They're like, No. Try like a day. And she's
like
just like,
tomorrow.
"What?" I told her what it was, and she's like, "Oh my God." She's like, "How are you talking? Like, I have never even heard of this. I've heard of people dying from their blood alcohol level being that high, but I've never heard of somebody sitting up talking, having a conversation with me, you know."
Mm-hmm.
And I told her, I was like, "Yeah, it's called tolerance." And the scary part of that, which led to the blackouts, is I didn't really have that much tolerance anymore. Like when I used to drink, sure, you know, I would have that tolerance, but when you go months without drinking and you start to lose it, and that's when I would start to drink. I would drink heavy, just like I never stopped. And that's when the blackouts would come, and that's what kind of got me into the trouble I got into. And, you know, by the grace of God, I'm here to talk about it. You know, it's the only thing. You know, it's the grace of God is the only reason why I'm here looking at this coin in my hand and here to tell the story. And, you know, I told my story a year ago. I was working at a treatment center, and they said, "Hey, you should lead a group and, you know, tell your story." And I was like, "Well, I was going to do it on the podcast." And they're like, "Yeah, that's fine. You know, that'd be cool." Dustin, our friend Dustin, was there to listen to it, which was pretty cool. You know, there were other people there that I know. And then, of course, you had the clients, the people that were in the treatment center. But I felt rushed. I only had like a certain amount of time. And I know that I pissed off one person really hardcore. And I said that, you know, in my opinion, you know, she was an alcoholic. And, you know, and maybe I didn't say it in those words, but it really hurt her. And it's not up to me to call people alcoholics, you know, and her version of it was, "Well, I was just trying to keep up with you." Mm-hmm. You know, so I didn't mean to offend anyone. I surely didn't mean to offend her, but I was just kind of telling the story from where I was and what I was thinking about at the time, looking back. So I don't really want to get into too much of like, oh, this is what happened and, blah, blah, blah. We all have our stories. We've been there. We've been through some dark times. And, the good thing about recovery is you get a chance to live and you get a chance to right those wrongs. And that's kind of what the steps in AA kind of lead you towards, like, telling people that you're sorry and making amends. I'm doing the living amends. I told my sister, my mom, and everybody in my life that I was sorry so many times. It doesn't mean anything anymore. I wrote a blog about that, I think a month or so ago. Mm-hmm. Nobody cares about if you're sorry. Nobody cared if I'm sorry anymore. So I'm proving it to them, right? By being sober now. I heard a lady at a meeting, I think it was when I got my 2-month coin, and I didn't even want it. And I was actually in treatment. And I heard a lady who was getting her 6-month coin, and she said that, and it was the same thing, same reason why I wasn't going to get my 2-month coin and why I didn't get my 1-month coin. I've already gotten them so many times. Like, it's not cool anymore to get them. But the lady said she was actually going to give these coins to her mother. And I thought, what? That's awesome. Mm-hmm. Like, I want to do that. And that was something that helped me. And that was like the first step of me being, I don't want to say selfless, but me doing the good thing, not for me to get the coin, but for somebody else to get the coin. For my mom to get the coin. And she loved them. And I started mailing them to her. I mailed a couple to my sister, my brother. And now, I mailed her a coin. And I told her not to open it till the 15th. And of course she opened it on the 10th, but that's fine. And she was like, thank you so much, honey. It means so much that, I have 2 years. And I'll keep doing that for the rest of my life. Mm-hmm. And it means something to her, which means something to me.
Right.
And that was the first kind of like, hey, if I help other people, be happy, then I can be happy too. So, I got out of rehab, and before I did, I really had a choice to make. My apartment in Buchanan, Michigan had been evacuated, I guess, or cleaned out. My lease was coming up. I was in rehab. I really wasn't going to go back and live there. And I think I owed them a month or two, which I ended up taking care of eventually, paying them. But it just didn't make sense for us to, or for me to stay there. And I didn't really want to go back. And so that left options of, well, I could go live with mom, or I could do sober living. Now, if I went and lived back with my parents, I would feel awkward again. There wasn't really anything for me to do in Southwest Michigan. I mean, as far as like job-wise, and I didn't like being in the public there. I felt like too many people knew me, and they would always ask me what happened with WYRX and what happened with the radio station, when are you going to get back into radio? And I wanted to get back into radio, but I didn't. I didn't want to move again. And I was afraid that if I did get back into radio, I would have to move again and I would drink again. Mm-hmm. And I was at that very early stage of like, man, I got to get this time, and I got to do the right things. And I didn't want to live with a bunch of men. And then I thought, well, if I move back home, and I felt there was some codependence there with my mom. It's not a bad thing. I just could kind of to feel it, like she wants to help me. She wants me to do good. And if I need $20, I'd be like, hey, mom, And I didn't want to do that either. I figured this is something I have to do on my own. So I said, you know what? I'm going to do sober living. And then it came time for me to start making calls to some sober living houses. And I called around to Traverse City. And Traverse City is where I wanted to go. It's like, I'll go to Traverse City. And there was a place in Boyne City called Nathan's House. Some of the guys that I knew and didn't like from the treatment center I was in, they were going to Nathan's House. I thought, well, sure as hell, I'm not going there. I hated those guys, especially one of them. One of them, really. And I was like, I don't want to be in a room with that guy, let alone live in a house with him. I'm good on that. So I call around to Traverse City, and this guy do like an interview over the phone for a place called TC Retreat. And I was talking to the house manager, and he was just like drilling me like, well, are you ready to do this and ready to do that? And what are you going to do for a job? And I was like, I don't know, man. I'll probably figure it out. And he's like, well, you got to have something better than that. I don't know. I did radio for 20 years. Are you going to work at the radio station? I was like, yeah, I probably could pretty easily. But yeah, I mean, I'll figure it out when I get out, man. I'm not really stressing about that. Well, you need to be stressing because if you can't pay the rent, blah, 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 and you got to be willing to do anything. And then how my mind works, I'm a huge smart ass. So I was like, well, anything, willing to do anything. I was like, see, I'm not sure if I'm willing to do anything. He's like, well, then you're not going to remain sober very long. You got to be willing to do anything. Will you flip burgers? I'm like, no, I won't. What? You tell me you won't flip burgers? I'm like, well, hold on. What are you asking here, man? I was like, would I rather flip burgers than live under a bridge out in the cold? Yeah. But I would rather just get a job that I know that I can get or at least pursue something that would suit me more than flipping burger. Like, why would you take it to the lowest extreme? Like, I'm trying to think positive here. And he's like, well, you got to be willing to do it. I was like, you know what? And speaking of anything, I was like, I'm not going to throw my mom off a bridge. I'm not going to do sexual favors for men. I mean, and I started just listing the things that I was not going to do, and I'm not going to kill my cat. I was like, there's so much I'm not going to do. And he's like, well, then I don't think you're ready for it. And I was like, yeah, I don't think so either. So
Not
I
a good fit.
burn that bridge.
Yeah, sounds like it.
Yeah, but he was kind of a dick, and I can see where he's coming from, but that might have been a better conversation to have in person.
I think it was a miscommunication.
Yeah, I don't think so, because he was pretty adamant of what I needed to do, and I was like, let's try some other avenues before I go flip burgers, because I've never flipped burgers before. I can guarantee you I would be 100 million times better recording a commercial for radio than flipping a burger.
Mm-hmm. There's nothing wrong with flipping a burger.
I just don't know how to do it. I never have.
Right.
Never been a chef, never been a cook. I can cook some burgers in the kitchen here, but it's way different.
Right.
So like doing something that I am very unfamiliar with and that most people would say, oh, that's just a low job, no skill. I think that actually does take some skill. Mm-hmm. And those people make pretty good money nowadays.
Yeah, for sure.
So, just to go, flip some burger, you might be like, go pick up trash on the side of the road. I'm like, yeah, that I could probably do. Just give me a stick, because I got a bad back, but I still have excuses. But it just wasn't in the cards, So I ended up going to Nathan's house. I talked with Jason DeBeck, and his houses were really nice. And I thought, you know what, this will be a test. I really don't like this Billy guy that's in there. He's fake. He's fraud. Like the things that he's saying, he just says in front of people to make it sound good, but then doors are closed. Mm-hmm. He has no intentions of being sober.
Right.
He's just trying not to go back to Battle Creek and live. So I was like, all right. And then I get the bed right next to him. I was like, oh, geez, like, really, Lord? Well, it didn't take long for him to get found out and get the boot, but it was just one of those things where I had to do the thing that I didn't want to do. And then I had to do had to go to the place I didn't want to go. And I started realizing that you have to do that in life sometimes. You have to do those things that you don't want to do and go to those places you don't want to go. We had to do 5 meetings a week, which isn't bad at all. And I set up a routine to where I would go to different meetings around the area, Boyne City, East Jordan, Charlevoix, Petoskey, to where I would mix it up. And most of the guys, and especially the guys who didn't have vehicles, would just, have to be stuck with 1 or 2. So they would love going with me. So some meetings, it would be like these 2 people. Other meetings, it was these 2 people. So it was like I got to know everybody kind of in the house that I didn't know very well, by driving them to the different meetings. It was just a really good bonding experience.